Hello, hello, everyone. We are streaming live. Happy New Year to all of you. Lisa Duerre, your favorite host. If not, I hope to be one day of these LinkedIn Lives through RLD Group in partnership with Rachelle Niemann Consulting and Colibri. I am here today because we have seen in our client engagements a lot of change fatigue. And we have heard from our clients there's a lot of mistrust going on with changes in orgs, changes in policies, all the different things that are basically influencing business today. And because we're hearing it inside our client engagements, we thought we would bring this conversation to all of you here live and bring your voices in too. Because we know when you cultivate trust, you boost well being. And that's a blueprint for productivity, results, and innovation inside your organizations. So I'd like to bring our guest hosts up today. And as we bring them up, I'd love for you to drop in chat where you're calling from or how do you define trust. I said calling, where you're tuning in from and how you define trust. So Rachelle, come on up. Alenka, please join us here. Yay. So you may have seen the three of us before, and we're back again. And I want to just say, when we think about trust, Alenka and Rachelle and I all have our own businesses, and we do similar work. And we have decided to co-create and collaborate in this space because we know stronger together. And I can't think of anything else as an example of trust than companies who do similar work coming together to bring their voices forward. So Rachelle and Alenka, welcome to the show today. Rachelle, why don't you go ahead and give a quick introduction about you, your firm, and why this topic is so important to you today.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm honored to be here and sharing space and collaboration with you and Alenka. It's been a great journey to collaborate with both of you. And my business is all around cultivating wholeness and well-being, and whether that's at the individual level, helping people kind of find that within themselves, and also with teams and organizations, kind of building that into the structure of how they operate so that they can all communicate better, know what's going on internally at an enhanced level, and also embrace creativity and innovation and work at an elevated level together.
It's so interesting because you say this when you talk about your work, Rachelle, it's very like calm and peaceful as you express it. And I'm like, hey, everybody, we're here, right? And I just think that there's something beautiful about our co-creation together because of the balance that we have. And also that you bring this calm confidence and steadiness into everything we do. And I'm just so grateful to have this time right here with you right now. So thank you for presencing what you do and who you are and modeling calm confidence in the moment as we're live, right? Because that's important for people to think about trust. You're consistent when you show up, and I know when I know I can count on you and to bring that forward. And I'm very grateful for that. So thank you for working with us and with our clients and with each other. I'm really glad you're here, and I can't wait for you to share your insights. And then Alenka Znidarsic. We always practice. I always practice every chance I get saying Alenka's last name. Alenka, why don't you come on up and introduce yourself and your company and why it matters to you?
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, both of you, to collaborate at a topic that is very, very close to me. I'm working as a collaborator, and I'm really passionate to bring more heart in front of technology and giving the people that work in technology and innovation, those are engineers, female and male, more power and self-awareness as a people that they are creating technology. And my work is on 3 levels. I always see it as a systemic approach. And I believe that individuals, people, they work in organization are interrelated with the systems. And I work with individuals, so engineers and the female engineers, to help them be authentic self and find their conscious leadership inside, to be more powerful in relationship, in teams, when they have to provide new ideas, new innovations, and really grow creativity and innovations, and also be ambassador of change in organizations. So helping organization design processes and ecosystem that works for them. They can feel well, and they can create, they can be proactive, productive, and also efficient So the organization has also a growing in the market and is able to deliver processes and products for customers. And why trust is so important for me. As an engineer, this was really hard topic for me in many organizations, because showing up and talking about myself and putting myself first in front of technology and excellence was many times hard, because there was no space to talk about the well-being or how I feel in the space. It was always just delivering a time pressure and innovative, I would say, good results and products. And I was always learning what means trust for myself. And working on myself, I realized that trusting myself, it's really the basics for everything. That I can show authentically me, that's how I say, with my strengths, and I can contribute to the team. It's the same way as I working with Lisa and Rachelle. I can be myself and contribute my strengths. And together we are like a puzzle when we can communicate, be transparent about each other's words and needs and who we are, and really create great things.
Alenka, so one of the things I think that's so important when we think of trust through the engineering lens is you said I had to figure out how to trust myself and be myself. And I think so much what I see in tech that I so appreciate that you bring this perspective forward is that, in my opinion, there's this always on, never good enough, will replace you tomorrow. You have to stay technically strong no matter what. And as people leaders and organizational leaders, trusting yourself to do what's right for the people and the business, people come to crossroads on a daily basis and they really get stuck. Like, how do I move through this? And my stance, and I think all of our stance, is you have to know yourself, then you have to build that trust on your teams, and then you have to figure out how this runs through the organization. And before we got on the live today, Rachelle was mentioning that it's almost an infinity loop, right? We're all in part of this together. And I can't wait to dive into your perspective, Alenka, as a PhD in engineering, as someone who looks at the systemic level and all the way down to your individual stories. I think as we define this blueprint for leaders today, both of your perspectives are going to be so helpful to inspire thought and action, right? Because we don't want to just sit here and theorize. We're going to bring real world examples and our own perspectives within our client engagements and our own journeys. And if I could just presence why it's important for me that we're here today. I mean, RLD Group stands for Rebooting Leadership Drive. And rebooting leadership drive really is a journey of figuring out how to trust yourself and become a firm leader. And what I mean by that in my own journey and experience is that we do three things. We take culture transformation out of the clouds into the hearts of the organization and the people. Okay. We also help eradicate burnout and improve well-being. And all of that then drives bottom line results. So the concept today that we're talking about, I know in my own burnout journey, was I didn't trust myself to ask for what I needed or to reframe how I was looking at work. I literally more and more distrusted myself. And I think that's what led to my own burnout. And because I wasn't trusting myself, then I wasn't trusting our teams and I wasn't trusting the system. And so fundamentally, I think it starts with us individually. And I can't wait to dive into this today. So let me start with the first statistic, if I could. Here's a statistic I want to bring up because I think this is really important to frame this for us, okay? And it's our 91% statistic. Give me 1 second. 91% of business executives say their ability to build and maintain trust improves the bottom line. So you just heard from Rachelle, Alenka, and I about why this matters to us. But all the business executives out there, 91% of you are saying that trust is critical, right, to driving the bottom line. So I'm curious for those of you listening live, if you have a perspective on this and you want to bring it forward, please use the chat and we'll bring your voice in. But Alenka, let's start with you. What do you think about this statistic? What shows up for you when you read this?
Before I will share my statistic, I would like to encourage you to share what are you seeing from your clients that you have, what they are saying about the trust when they are working with you.
Oh, okay. Well, so thank you, Alenka. Let me tell you what's happening in our world. We have a consulting engagement right now where there's a high growth area happening. And because of COVID, right, there's there's not been the same assimilation and onboarding that we've seen in the past. And so just one quick example is that, trust is built when you have relationships and interchange and exchange. And when you're not able to have that, distrust is rampant. And so that's just one example of what I'm seeing, where it's really important that people not just get the work done, but build the relationships underneath. And tied to that, I see this across the board: clear expectations and measurements of success, stopping to pause and recalibrate on what's important and what needs to change right now. There's so many conversations in our coaching engagements where people are just in back-to-back meetings and going to the next thing, that they're missing, we're all missing what we all teach and know is that power of pause and to recalibrate what's critical right now. So those are a couple examples of what I'm seeing. How about you?
I am seeing, if I really focus on engineering companies or tech companies, that engineers are burning out more than in the previous years. And one of the reasons when we have a conversation with them is really that it's fear to share. They don't have a real information. So integrity and communication is broken. And sometimes it is understandable because the change is happening so fast. And we are in this bunny, anxious world when everything is happening so fast, and the leaders, they just don't have time and capacity to really share all the information in time. And this increased stress and anxiety. And also feeling that you cannot show up as yourself. And that's influencing the teamwork, because engineers are not wanting or able to share or feeling secure to share new ideas, or many times they are not sharing why the product development is delayed and what are the main challenges, because they are afraid that they will get punished. What about you, Rachelle? What are you seeing with your clients?
I'm seeing a lot of pressure for leaders to feel like they have to know all the answers and make the decisions in a vacuum. And I think a way that we can build trust from the top down and then let it elevate from the bottom up is to bring voices in and get more perspectives, and trusting that the employees or the people, I don't want to call them lower level positions, but the people that are not in leadership positions have an important contribution, because they are the people that are affected by the decisions being made. So I think having that downward trust is as important as the upward trust, and they both kind of play off of each other and can build each other or destroy each other depending on what happens. And if there is something that happens to break down trust between people, kind of revisiting that in a very human and vulnerable, but from a place of strength, is a really important conversation for people to go back to and trust in themselves that they can have that conversation in a meaningful and generative way.
I am hearing that from both Lisa, Rachelle, and me, that in fact we are listening from our clients, or we are hearing from our clients, that the trust influence on 3 different levels: on the individual people, our relationship, and also when we are talking about the organizational processes. And we understand that there is all those 3 layers, there are some interplay between them. So if the trust is broken in ourselves, we cannot help organization as leaders to trust employees. And also, it's also from the other side. If some trust in organization from the top-down leadership is broken, that's influencing individual employees, that they cannot show up with the authenticity and strengths that they have. And I know, Lisa, that you're talking about that leaders has to be a role model when we are talking about trust, and that firm leadership is something that they can leverage when they can also develop more trust. So tell us more.
Yeah, Alenka, I really appreciate what you're saying. And if I could, I would like to talk about a story really quick that we saw that I think all of us can. So I want to give something practical right now, and I'm going to tie it back to the firm model. Last week, we hosted, RLD Group hosted a workshop for a sales team. And the leader came to us because they had been an executive coaching client, and some of the work that we had done in that, helping them understand when you're in fight or flight, how you're not able to be resourced to be innovative, right? And also what you can do to like listen to your body if you get a headache or you have excess energy or stress, like how might you move that through your system? So we did a conscious leadership component and we did a somatic component. And the first thing we did with them was have them check in the meeting. On a scale of 1 to 10, disconnected, anxious, shut down, or open, innovative, creative, like where are you on this grid? And that was how we started the meeting. And everybody gave a number. And then they talked about what was underneath it. But we didn't say you have to share your number. We just said check in with yourself. But man, they jumped right in with like, I'm a 4 because, we just reset quotas. And I'm like, holy cow, how am I going to do that? Or I'm a 6 because, we just had a change going on and I want to better understand what's going on. And I don't understand it, but I'm not sure how to ask these questions, right? So in that realm of checking in is something we can do at an individual level, a team level, and a system level. And I just want to give this practical tip right now because I watched what happened in that room as we just simply provided this frame of reference. Um, and I think Gabe's has a comment. Hi, Gabe's. I'm so glad you're here. And she's saying that there's a shift going on with people wanting to be more conscious, but they don't know how to do this. I totally agree with you, Gabe's. And I also think that example I just gave is a way to kind of become more conscious of what's going on. And Gabe's was actually in the workshop I'm talking about, and she ran the somatic experience that these leaders went through. So, Gabe's, I'm so glad you're here. And if you want to type anything in to share, please do. And I want to tie back, Alenka, to what you were saying about the firm model that we have. And so, one of the things that I'm probably a broken record, but I'll just presence for all of us is that firm stands for flexible, intuitive, resilient, and mindful. And we believe that that's the operating system that needs to be downloaded into the leaders in your organization, right? Or at least rebooted. Because in the world that we're in, that's brittle, anxious, nonlinear, and incomprehensible, and the rate of change that is happening, change fatigue is rampant, and leaders have to figure out how to resource themselves, honestly, mind, body, and spirit, to be able to bring their best selves forward. They've got the technical knowledge, right? But how do we bring the rest forward so you can stay grounded in the midst of a crisis and lead teams in the midst of change? So I appreciate you asking me about Firm Alenka, and I hope that just check-in experience that I just described is useful for everyone, because you can do it with yourself and with your teams and with your organizations. What are your thoughts on that, Alenka?
I like and I see the firm model as a tool for leaders.
Mm-hmm.
They can use it and they can develop, I would say, first trust in themselves. Those are the 4 valuable skills that every leader in the Bani world has to have. And this could help them to be a role model for others.
Mm-hmm.
Leaders has to be a role model for others. And I know that Rachelle has also other tools, small things that the leaders can use to boost the trust or self-awareness or bring more voices. So please, Rachelle, share some of yours.
Yeah, thank you, Alenka. So much of what you guys are saying is just gold for people, and it doesn't have to be complicated or time consuming, but also I'm thinking about like how it's just like meeting to meeting, back to back. We barely have time to go to the bathroom because we're just on all the time. And so one of the ways to increase flexibility is to have a little bit of space. And I think that's such a gift that leaders can give to themselves, is evaluating their day and saying, where can I create just a little bit more space to check in with myself and bring that mindfulness component forward, and just saying like, where am I? How am I feeling? What do I need to do in this moment to feel resourced as I go into this next meeting or conversation or whatever is happening next? Spaciousness can be such a gift that we give to ourselves to be able to remain flexible and resilient, and bring that mindfulness component forward. Because when we're always on, always going, it's hard to remember to take that moment to pause. And just one of my favorite practices that leaders can do, anybody can do, is to take a moment and take 6 deep breaths. It, takes 30 seconds to a minute, and it can be a really powerful practice to just bring you to the present moment and be able to open the space to check in with yourself.
Thank you, Rachelle. And when we start this conversation, we were stating that leading with trust, meaning the nurturing workplace well-being. Lisa, how do you see that connection and relationship between those two? Trust, leading with trust, or having trust in organization, and also leading with a trust, be a role model, and also creating or enabling well-being in the workplace.
Alenka, thank you. I want to pull up another statistic to kind of land what you're asking, right? So here's a statistic from MIT Sloan, okay? Trusting employees are 260% more motivated to work, have a 41% lower rates of absenteeism, and are 50% less likely to look for another job. Like, I think I should just stop talking. Like, that quote is, when you're thinking about the competitive labor market that we're in, and you're thinking about absenteeism and what's going on and how you can count on your employees to get the job done, even your leaders, 260% more motivated to work when there's trust. So I think it's so compelling that people might just be like, well, how could you possibly have trust at work? And I'm here to say it's absolutely essential to have trust at work. And I'll go back to it starts with yourself. Because I think my biggest blind spot growing up as a leader, as I evolved in my executive career, was I felt that I had to have all the answers. I thought I had to look like I had it all together all the time. And I felt very clear that I wasn't supposed to push back or question things. I was just supposed to do what's being asked of me. And I regret that. I'm not happy with that part of me at that time. And I've learned a lot from it. Pushing through and always on and just add one more thing, that's not leadership. That's just obligating employees to keep going. And so when I burnt out and I rebooted, one of the first things I looked at was, how was I showing up and what were the beliefs I was holding and what really mattered most. And I loved my team. I loved our products. I loved our customers. And I realized that it starts with me as a role model to change my behavior, to start saying no, or yes and, or yes if, right? And to think about reprioritizing instead of just doing more, because when you just say yes, you're giving your power away, you're depleting your resources, and you're burdening yourself and your team. A yes and or a yes if is a much better way to go. So I'm a little bit soapboxy right now. I hope that answered your question, Alenka. Rachelle, anything you want to add to Alenka's question about why this is important and how does it all tie together and why it matters?
Yeah, I think that modeling it is really important, and it can be easy, I think, to get into um, a frame where you're telling your team, hey, do this, like take the time to take care of yourself. But then you forget to model that yourself. And you get in front of a different audience and you start talking about all the sacrifices you've made for the company in the past. And those moments of that self-awareness, I think, are really important to know how you're modeling the behavior. Because if you're not showing your people and your team how to go about taking care of yourself, they're not going to know either. And I think it could be a powerful exercises for teams to kind of talk about that together, of like, how might we show up for each other to support each other in taking care of ourselves? Like, is there a support factor a team can do? Like, hey, do you want to go for a walk? Or, hey, you look a little frazzled. Is there something I can do to support you? And like, have that conversation of what care and trust looks like from a team perspective. But having these conversations, I think, is essential in getting it out in the open rather than trying to guess all the time if you're doing the right thing. So crafting those generative questions to have conversations amongst a team, amongst an organization, amongst leaders, to help bring the collective wisdom to surface.
It's interesting because Gabe's is commenting right now and quoting you, Rachelle. So let's pull her comment up and bring her voice in. And Gabe's, thanks for chatting with us. Your voice matters so much. So in her opinion, in her humble opinion, cultivating trust requires connection. For leaders to cultivate trust requires time. Time to connect is related to what Rachelle is talking about with creating spaciousness. And she hears a lot, there isn't enough time. And time bends to what's important and what's prioritized, right? And so the invitation for all the leaders in this conversation with Gabe's comments here too is, what matters most right now? It's one of our favorite questions we ask based on the work of Dr. Danny Friedland. And what matters most right now might be connection. Example I'll give you is I was working with an executive client and I was about to give him his 360 results. And we pulled up on Zoom and I could tell by the look on his face, he was not okay. But he was like, okay, let's do this, right? And as a leader, what's going on. And I took the report, I grabbed the paperwork, right? And I put it down. I said, listen, this can wait. I want to make sure that you're in a place where you can receive this feedback and we can do something really instrumental for your career with it. And right now, I need to know what's going on for you so I can support you here right now. And he was so stressed. He hadn't been sleeping for days. There was some product stuff going on. He had all this other internal things going on, but he didn't want to be late for his coach. He didn't want to, make me think that the 360 feedback wasn't important. And he later told me that me pausing and putting everything aside and being with him in that moment was all the modeling he needed to be able to do that for himself and for his team. But he hadn't seen that before. He hadn't seen the reprioritization of what matters most right now. And I think that as we look at building trust, trust means that you care about me as a human being and that you can see what's going on with me. I'm just curious, Alenka, in your work and with your clients, do you have an example that you might talk about, bending time or prioritizing time and connection to kind of pull this through when it comes to cultivating well-being and increasing trust?
I am seeing a lot of examples coaching engineers, especially women in engineering fields. Especially women in engineering fields, they feel that they are working in the really male, dense, dominated workspaces in organizations. And many times the stress builds because they cannot be themselves. They don't have flexibility. They don't have time for having for bringing kids to the activities or school. So there is no flexibility. And in those situations, when I coach them how to develop skills, to be more aware what they need and how to ask what they need, it's always coming to the situation when there is a lot of pausing and stressing and really also crying many times. And the crying is just to show me that they are so stressed that they don't even know how to get out of the situation. And what happened many times, I see that they are leaving the job and they try to find their own way of earning money as a selfpreneur or individuals working for themselves at home. So we are losing a lot of women and diversity also because there is not trust in the organization, and it's showing up a lot in my work as a coach. And when we talk about that, why on one hand we are losing diversity because of the not having trust, and we know that diversity brings much diverse perspectives and innovation to the organizations. And also the female energy also bringing more opportunity for well-being, for working about or listening about the well-being in the organization.
Mm-hmm. I'm seeing that too. I appreciate you presencing that through the lens of the working women, working parents. I'm a disability advocate and I see that for the disabled community as well. The flexibility and being resilient in the wake of what is faced. Right now we're in the middle of an ice storm, right? There's people all around me, they don't have water or power. And they're still thinking about how do I get this job done or the project out the door, right? And the kids are out of school because you can't get them to school. And so when you have this environment that we're in, which is Bonnie, you have to be able to figure out how to be flexible, intuitive, resilient, and mindful in yourself, but also create that experience for your team. So I really appreciate you sharing your perspective on that, Alenka, and what you're seeing. And Rachelle, I want to wrap this question up with you based on Gabe's comment about time and connection. What tips do you have? Because I know as someone who practices well-being on a daily basis and teaches this inside our client groups and inside your own, what comes to mind in this conversation right now that's something practical leaders can do?
First, I just want to bring forward an acknowledgement. Something that we've talked about in past lives together is that this may feel like this whole idea of well-being and this one more thing we need to restructure in our businesses and consider can feel really overwhelming. And I think when we're like just thinking about it as one more thing we have to do or grasp or understand or bring in, it can create a lot of anxiety, and like that's the opposite of well-being. And so I just want to acknowledge that it's okay if this feels overwhelming. I do think this is something new that our culture has not been focused on in the past. And for a very long time, we've been building up the stress levels, the overwhelm, all of this has been building up. And then you throw a pandemic in the middle of that, and like we're all kind of sitting here holding our breaths because we're at this precipice of we either need to choose to do things differently, or the stress and the culmination of all of the overwhelm and the anxiety is going to force us to do something about it. And so I think taking that moment to just pause and notice if you're feeling overwhelmed, and to just be in acceptance that that's where we are today and that's okay. And it's okay that you just figure out the next right step. Like you don't have to have the whole map, the whole blueprint today. You just need to have the next right step to open up a little bit of space to potentially create some change in the environment to help cultivate trust and connection amongst team members.
I appreciate that, Rachelle. I think one of the things that I'm just thinking of my own experience as well as the client journeys that we have is so many times it's not even conscious for leaders to go, I'm overwhelmed or I'm stressed, right? It's just my adrenaline's running and this is what work's like. This is how it is. And then you transition to home and bring it home and then transition through that. And one of the things that I'm really inspired by our clients is that they are taking the steps to figure it out. And a lot of times I see them starting with strengths. And we do so much strengths work. It's very it inspires and enlivens me every day, because one of the concepts in the strengths work that we do, Clifton strengths work that we do, is that everybody brings strengths to the table. And so that what may be stressful for you simply might be because it's not in your strength zone. And so then how can you work on your team to look at all the strengths that are there and figure out how you leverage and run your team through this lens rather than just this is your job. I mean, even yesterday setting this up, I was talking to Randy, my business partner and husband and our producer. Thank you, Randy. And I was worried about the graphics, right? This is not my strength zone. I am not a graphics person, right? And he was just like, Lisa, we're not playing to strengths right now. I was like, this is why I'm overwhelmed. And I teach this stuff, right? And so I just want to say that we're always evolving. And even what we teach, we still learn. And so one of the, I think the invitations is to think about, do you know the strengths on your team? Who's really good at something? Who gets energized by something that maybe you don't, or that causes you stress and anxiety? And how might you partner? Right? When Rachelle, Alenka, and I worked on this, we co-created the questions and the statistics and what we're going to call it. And, we even tried to blend our logos together to be able to help us all do that. Right. But we played to our strengths in that. So yes, you don't have to boil the ocean. You can do one thing. You can do one thing. And if it's 6 deep breaths, it's a great start. If it's starting your meeting with a check-in, what's going well? What's something that's keeping you up at night? Just allowing people to be more human in the transactions of work so that you build those connections. It's a game changer. And if you want help with that, we are here. Alenka, Rachelle, and I do this work together. Gabe's as well. We'd love to support you. We do this every day. And if you want to bring the conversation into your organization, we want to do that. We're also going to be starting to host executive roundtables where we'll dive deeper and help the participants in these executive roundtables really look at it through the lens of their business. So, Randy, if we can drop that link, if you guys want to join our executive forums, take a look here and opt in, and we'll let you know when the next one is. But fundamentally, don't do it alone. Like, trust is not built with you thinking about it in your brain and going about this by yourself. Trust is built by experimentation, vulnerability, and really just leaning into what you see as the vision for yourself as a leader in your organization. So, Alenka, I want to send it over to you for a minute to think about and just presence at an organizational level, right? So we've talked about individuals and teams, but how is trust built at the organizational level? What are your thoughts and insights on what you're seeing today?
In the organizational level, first of all, equip leaders with the skills. The skills how to be aware of your triggers, how to be aware about your strengths, and how to lead by trust. So this is the first one that I don't see a lot of organizations are doing in the leadership development. And then the second one is incorporate or in the processes that you have allow some spaciousness, time to reflect, to listen each other, also to talk about what you need to connect. Many times this is not embodied in the processes or in the daily meetings or weekly meetings, team meetings. So many times it's just when we talk about the meetings, it's just talking about the content, and many times the questions that it's missing, why it's important to talk about that topic now and how are we feeling now or how we are connecting now. So starting every meeting with this routine, just having 5 minutes to check up, to appreciate each other and ask for a feedback, listen. Also many times is also when we have a top-down organization, then the trust has to be built from top down. So encourage really the top leadership to be a role model for the whole organization. Be transparent, appreciate others, invite for feedback. And feedback, teaching about the giving and asking for a feedback, it's really important skills that every leader has to have. Those are small actions, small changes on the organizational levels. And the bigger one is just to build the culture and values that they are related to trust. And trust should be one of the values in every organization. And think about the behaviors and the values that you want to incorporate in your work and activities through the day.
Yeah, I appreciate, I guess I say I appreciate a lot. It's one of my core values is to presence my appreciation. So I'm modeling appreciation. Alenka, I appreciate the perspective. And you made me think about something that the three of us have talked about a lot. And Rachelle, I'm going to send it to you with this question, okay? We talk about listening at scale, right? And yesterday we were in a consulting meeting with our client, and we got the greatest compliment I've ever gotten as a consultant was like, hey, you're not the consulting firm that just we pay you to tell us what we want to hear. Like, you're not going to tell us what we want to hear. Because we went and did stakeholder interviews, and they're like, this is fabulous. You brought so much information back. Our 360s that we do they're not by computer. We do our 360 assessments for, like I was mentioning earlier, through interviews. And we talk about listening at scale and how we can, tap into the ideas and the wisdom that's in the organization. So, Rachelle, when you think about listening at scale and just listening, you always inspire me with the thoughts that you bring. I'd love to presence that here for this audience when it comes to trust and well-being. Can you talk a little bit about your perspective on listening and, maybe some practical ways listening can have such an impact in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Lisa. First, to listen, we have to be present. And so to listen generously, you have to stop the inner dialogue and actually be present with another human to hear what they're having to say And I think listening to understand rather than listening to respond is such an important skill. And it is a skill, it can be practiced and improved. And even like playing games with yourself during conversations to check in to see, am I listening generously right now to another human, or am I creating my own dialogue that's distracting me from listening? And I think a good way to practice that skill is asking for clarification or understanding. Like, this is what I heard you say. Did I understand that correctly? And letting them kind of elaborate on what they were saying. And so I think these are listening generously is one of the greatest gifts we can give to other humans. And I think it is such a way to build trust, to allow people to be seen and really feel heard and witnessed in what they're saying, rather than you just adding your own story to something, which can have its benefits in some situations. But to say, oh, wow, I really understand what you're saying there. Thank you for sharing that with me, is such a powerful response to allow people to feel seen and heard and felt. And that, I think, is one of the fastest ways to build trust. And there are ways, we all use exchange facilitation methodologies with the basis of appreciative inquiry, which are a lot of words that may not mean anything right now to you. But it's a way to listen at scale. It's a way to bring a generative question forward, have people talk about it, and get important and meaningful conversations happening amongst people, and in so that voices are heard and collective wisdom is shared, and people really feel like they were part of the conversation. And I think it's just such an important skill and gift we can give to everybody. Both Lisa and Alenka model generous listening so well. And I, from a personal standpoint, have been one of the people that was like, no, I can figure everything out on my own and I can do it all. But being part of a team that does listen generously has opened up so much more capacity for me in my own trust of myself, as well as trusting of other people, that it's just, there's nothing else like it to build trust amongst people. So thank you for the question, Lisa. I would love to hear your thoughts on that, Alenka, as well.
Listening at scale, I would like to encourage every team leader in whatever they are doing to listen at scale. And as Rachelle said, this can be done with exchange approach, where every voice can be heard and every voice can bring ideas to the table. So we know the structure and we know the concept that works well. I think that the role of leaders is to learn about them and really experiment with them in the teams while they were developing new products, or even they are working on the product themselves. And through that models, listening is one of the first skills that they have to have if they want to make it work well. And just giving everyone enough time to share. So they have to be spacious in timing when they organize those meetings, that they allow every person to be heard. And what I'm seeing in teams especially is a lot of people, they say those engineers are introverts. And many times you have to find a way how to incorporate their voices too. There are different ways, but as a leader, don't give priority only to people that they talk all the time. Try to make space for the people that they have something to say, but they are not open or able or have a feeling that they cannot contribute.
Alenka, can I join you there for a second? I really, I hope people are taking notes, because this is it. So one of the things that I know in working with engineers who are labeled as introverts, and I've had to learn, I've learned this skill over time, is the power of the pause and then the question. So if you say, are there any questions? It's totally different than if you say, what questions do you have? As a leader, if you're running a meeting and you want to bring voices in, saying, what questions do you have, is the invitation to presence a question. Your energy has to match, your face has to match. But if you're like, are there any questions? That means like, I'm in a hurry. You know what I mean? Like the message, the underlying message is like, please don't keep us here, right? Let's get moving on. But what questions do you have is like, I'm here, I want to hear them. So that's the first thing I think about when I coach people who have lots of introverts on their team, right? What questions do you have? They need time to process. And it needs to feel safe. And then you could follow up with, hey, and if you don't have one right now, that's okay. But, email me if you do, when they show up, because you will, and that's okay. So it's almost, there's just magic in modeling openness, right? And that's spacious too, right? By allowing that. And the second thing I was thinking about when you were talking, we have this exercise we do with the strengths work and the conscious leadership work that we do, where we ask people, how do you show up when you're at your best? What are the characteristics, strengths, qualities that you show up when you're at your best? And for me, I'm like playful, I'm open, my pace is a little bit slower, and I just feel less tense. And then we ask, when you're at your least, how do you show up? And for me, it's like closed, one way, in a hurry, right? There's not enough time. And I think the invitation I want to make for the listener right now and us is, how would you describe how you feel when you feel trust? And how would you describe how you feel when there's a lack of trust? Like, what are the characteristics you show up? How might you perceive things? What does it feel like in your body? What are the stories you tell yourself? I know for me, when I feel trust, it feels safe, that I can be myself. I can make mistakes. It's not going to be the end of the world. We're going to figure it out. It feels generative and like very life-giving to me. And when I feel a lack of trust, I get weird. I get like shut down. I'm overthinking everything. Like it's like protective mode, right? It's like my amygdala is in the driver's seat and it's all about safety. And I'm not creative. I'm not generative, nor am I very fun to be around. And I think that may be a start where we could all do is just think about, like, when are you most effective and least effective? And how does it feel for you? How can you show up as your best self when there's trust? And where are you like when it's not there? Because that at least gives you like the polarity to be able to then check in with yourself on a regular basis. And so this is just all intuitively flowing through me based on what you both just said. Do either one of you want to add to this part, or do you have a thought? Like, have I maybe inspired a thought or an insight you want to share? Rachelle, Alenka, either one?
Thing I want to add is it goes back to spaciousness and the power of reflection. And so giving yourself the space and the time to actually think and feel into those things and like write it down or maybe even verbalize it with somebody else can be really, really powerful practices to bring the presence to those. And it does require a little bit of time and attention and energy. So that spaciousness is there to really feel into it and kind of lessen the anxiety that might be present if you're trying to rush through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Rachelle, thanks. And it's so interesting because when we do this exercise with folks, and we've all done it together, we give you like 5 minutes to reflect on each side, right? Sometimes we have you go find an artifact to represent you at your least and your most effective. But then we put you in a conversation with either a partner or a group in the workshops. And then you discuss and you realize, you too, me too, no way. And so I feel like when we talk about spaciousness, the invitation might be, do this on your own, put a timer on for 5 minutes and reflect, just start. Then find one other person to talk to about it, right? So the invitation's there. And eventually, if you want help facilitating it, of course we do that. But it's really powerful. And this is not like a 7-day silent retreat exercise we're giving you. Okay. This is not like a really big, heavy lift. This is even if you gave yourself a half an hour, right? Even on your commute, whatever, in the shower, think about it. Like, there's ways to reflect on this to actually bring it more to the consciousness level for yourself. Thank you, Rachelle. Alenka, anything you want to add on this? Let me change it. I'm going to model it. Not anything. What would you like to add on this? Sorry.
I will bring engineering culture back
Yep.
Because they are so close to my heart. I see so much stereotyping in the engineering culture, when excellence and analytical brain are so strong. Even from my experience, I know that unconsciously I didn't give myself permission to really slow down, pace, and work on myself. And this can build up long term into the stress. And as you said, triggers that non-trusting maybe more show up for me as I like to bring product, like this, being triggered and reactive back with my answers and suggesting, not feeling in my authentic self values. I would really encourage leaders in the tech organization to give permission or inviting engineers to do that work. I know, Lisa, you are saying do your work yourself. Engineers, many times they will not do that. So they need some kind of encouragement from the leaders in organization to do that. Because it will work for them and for the organizations. However, this is so strong business case that everybody should realize that working ourselves first as a leader in tech organization or as a team member, it's important if you want to build trust, collaboration, and be productive and innovative at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes for me, it's really important to mention that it's very easy to lose trust. However, it's a long process to build the trust again. And working on trust is not one-time activity. It's long-term process that you really have to consciously working and keeping all the time. It's like adding marbles to a jar 1-to-1. And when it's full, then you have really encouraging trust culture and also well-being culture in the organization. However, only one activity can break the trust and put on the spiral, on the downward spiral for the whole organization.
Mm-hmm. Alenka, thank you. And it's funny, I say do it yourself, and you're so right. This is why they hire us to do these workshops, right? People don't do it on their own. I'm trying to say, here's your DIY version. And yet having a facilitator who gets it, who processes it with you, this is why some of our workshops that we do, we keep getting asked to do more, and it expands because having support with that, right? Then it's not one more thing. And I think your other point about the marbles and building over time and how it can erode too is so critical. And I think I'd like to wrap it here with some inspiration on that. If trust isn't there right now, or you've eroded it as a leader, Rachelle, I'm going to plant the seed why I do this. What's one thing a leader can do to repair trust? I'm going to give you that question. And in just a moment, I'm going to say, we'd love for you to join us in our next executive roundtable. We would love for you to join us in our forums. So we're going to put the link up here. Please let us know you're interested. We'll invite you in. You'll be able to experience this firsthand. And if you liked this conversation or if you're inspired by it, please share it within your network. Join us again on our next live. We really want to be in conversation with you. And Gabes, thank you for bringing your voice in today. And so with that, cultivating trust, boosting well-being as a blueprint for you as a leader. If it's not there or you feel like you want to increase it, I'd like us to end with that. Rachelle, Alenka, thoughts? Let's start with Rachelle. What's one thing that a leader can do today to start to improve the trust factor in there for them as a leader and in their organization?
I think the first thing to do is to check in with yourself to see how much you have, the capacity that you have to build a trusting environment, if you have the trust within yourself. And then secondly, I would say connect with your people on a human level. Give them the context of, I just want to check in and see what's going on with you and how you are, how you're feeling about your work, about your role. And just really listening generously in that conversation can do a lot to build that trust and put that marble into the jar.
Thank you, Rachelle. Yeah. Check in, really check in, connect at the human level, and put your marbles in the jar. I love it. Alenka, how about you? What's your advice and insights for leaders if they want to increase their trust in their organization?
I I can relate to what Rachelle said. And I would say check in, allow yourself to pause. So when you slow down and pause it, then you can check up with yourself. And be curious. Bring more curiosity, more question to yourself and to the others. And one thing that always helps is to bring smile to the workplace.
Mhm.
When you bring smile while you meet people, also somehow enhance appreciation and open a space for being curious and listening and just checking how the people are.
Oh, I love it. Bring the smile, pause, give yourself that moment. Yeah. I think I would add, and this is a little bit off to the side, but one of the things I know is that leaders still hold themselves to having all the answers. And that doesn't make for trust in the organization if you're supposed to have all the answers. And we stand for the wisdom is inside your organization and amongst your team because of the way that the world is these days, right? We know this to be true. And I think one way you could start to build trust is to start asking people for their insights and opinions and hold your opinion back. Give them a chance to inform your opinion or your ideas or your team priorities. One of my favorite questions is, what should we stop doing? What's not working? And then be quiet. Don't have all the answers and let people tell you. And then say, okay, what becomes possible if we stop this or we shift priorities? So I think part of the way to build trust is in asking the question and trusting that your team has insight and make it safe for them to share. So with that, Rachelle, Alenka, thank you for being here with me today. I love our co-creation and collaboration that we do. Randy, thank you for producing this event. We'd love to invite you to our executive forums. Please tune in to LinkedIn, like and share this post. We're here for you. We've got you. We've lived it. We're in it too. You're not alone. And from all of us to all of you, a big virtual hug and 6 deep breaths. We've given you 3 minutes back. So you have time for 6 deep breaths and making a note of one small action you can do today to increase trust and boost well-being in your organization. Thanks, everybody.